Friend of the program, Matt Verderame here of Sports Illustrated to talk us through day two of the NFL owner meetings and some other headlines around the league. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm good, thanks. So, Roger Goodell getting a contract extension. Kind of walk us through what are the main takeaways from day two of these meetings?
Well, I think with Goodell, look, it was expected. This is a league that has had three commissioners since 1960. So they're pretty straightforward. And as long as things are going good, they're not going to rock the boat. And with Goodell, you see the value of these franchises skyrocketing. I mean, the NFL was a league where teams were being sold for a pittance compared to what they're being sold for now. I mean, 30 years ago, Jerry Jones bought into the Cowboys for, by their standards, virtually nothing. And now that is a franchise that is worth in excess of $7 billion. We just saw the Broncos and the Commanders sell in the recent years for huge, enormous, unthinkable sums of money even 10 years ago. So I think when you look at the value of the league and the teams in it, when you look at the TV deals and then the streaming deals and now YouTube TV getting involved and Amazon getting involved, I think the owners see Goodell as someone who is well positioned to move them into the next phase, which is going to be continued streaming, continued gambling. I think they feel like Goodell has done a nice job of kind of stewarding the league through what is a little bit of a transition in how the game is brought to the fans.
How much of the NFL is a beast that feeds itself to a certain extent? I mean, it is undoubtedly America's pastime. The gambling market is insane around it. And you mentioned all these TV streaming companies that want a piece of it. I mean, how much responsibility does Roger Goodell really have in all this, in expanding and continuing to expand a league that just is seemingly impossible to stop?
Yeah, I think the main thing is don't crash the Cadillac. I mean, look, at this point, like you're going to have to handle certain issues as they come up, right? So in the last, let's say 10 years, we saw the concussion issue become a very big talking point nationally. What are you doing to limit concussions? Nobody expects you're going to eliminate concussions, but what are you doing? What steps are you taking to keep players more in a safe space? And I think you see the independent neurologist on the sidelines. You see guys being forced to come out of games to be checked to make sure that they have all their faculties. And so that's one thing. I think another thing is we're seeing it now. This gambling is great for the league from a bottom line standpoint, but it also raises issues. There have been players who have been suspended for lengthy amounts of time because they've gambled on games, specifically guys like Calvin Ridley. Jameson Williams was gambling from the facility, which you're not allowed to do. And so I think that's something that Goodell has to handle and has to be on top of, making sure that there's policies in place that are working for domestic abuse, for PEDs. But as far as getting a good TV contract, look, they're not going to have any shortage of suitors to get themselves on television. That's not going to be a problem. I think it's really just about making sure they work through the issues. And if they can do that, they'll be just fine.
You highlighted a number of the issues that Roger Goodell's had to navigate. Is safety at the top of that list? And if so, this hip drop tackle change, walk us through what that could potentially mean.
I think that's a very hard change to make because it's one thing to say, hey, don't hit a guy helmet to helmet. That's clear, that's cut and dry. If you hit a guy helmet to helmet, you can see that. And even that sometimes can be hard to officiate in real time because it may look like helmet to helmet when really it's helmet to shoulder and maybe it's more of a glancing blow. The hip drop tackle that they're referring to is essentially when you get these guys around, when a defender gets a ball carrier around the waist and then they kind of drop their whole body weight down to force that player down to the ground. And it is a dangerous tackle. The problem is if you're a defender and you're in a position where that's really your only course of action is maybe kind of lunging at that guy and using your body weight to drag him back, what do? You just not tackle him? He keeps running? I mean, coaches are going to tell guys, look, man, take the penalty. I mean, if that, we saw Marcus Peters a couple weeks ago intentionally horse collar a Packers player, not out of a dirty play, but because it's that or a touchdown, it saved them the game. It won them the football game. That hip drop thing, I think, becomes very hard to officiate in real time. Did he pull? It's kind of like almost the roughing the passer where you talk about did he drop his weight on the quarterback? That's a really hard thing to officiate. Did he kind of roll off of him? Was there an effort made? I know the NFL wants player safety in every spot, and I'm for it. But in this instance, I think that is a very, very tough thing to truly officiate in the moment when a player is just trying to make a tackle and maybe it turns into a hip drop tackle. I don't think it happens enough that the NFL has to fully legislate this all out.
Have you been able to get a sense from defensive coaches about whether or not they feel hamstrung? I mean, safety is such a sensitive topic, and like you said, rightly so, and it is going to be a part of Roger Goodell's legacy, in addition to this juggernaut that keeps making so much money. What is the thinking there in terms of where the line is? I mean, the game is the game, and it's almost like you have to decide if you're going to watch it and participate or if you're not going to. But how much further can you continue to manipulate it in an attempt to make an inherently dangerous game safer?
It's hard. It's really hard. And yeah, defensive coaches definitely feel hamstrung. I remember this summer I was doing a project for Sports Illustrated or partaking in it where we were just having fun. It was a dead period in July, and we were coming up with things that we thought were kind of outrageous takes that we also believed in. And I had to talk to some defensive coaches and say, look, we should get rid of the safety and we should change it. And so, long story short, I talked to Wink Martindale for it of the Giants, and Wink was like, look, you can't get rid of the safety. It's one of the few defensive advantages we have left. It's one of the few ways we can do anything. And I think there is a sentiment in the league in general of, look, it's harder than ever to play defense, right? I mean, you can't hit guys high, fine. You can't hit them low. You can't really punish a guy going across the middle without probably getting a 15-yard penalty. It's very difficult to play defense. And look, the league is faster now than it's ever been, which is true on both sides of the ball, but it's harder than ever to get your hands on a receiver. If you chuck a guy downfield, you're going to get called for it. Pass interference, those calls are more prevalent than they were 30 years ago. It is a hard league right now to stop a good offense in. And I just think with the hip drop penalty, look, I get it. I understand why the league's looking at it. There are a lot of injuries out of it. Guys get their legs caught. At the same time, it's kind of like trying to legislate an inside fastball out of baseball. Like, at some point, you have to take the risk when you step in the box that guy might come up and in on you. Like, you have to be willing to accept that, because otherwise you can't play the game. And in football, I don't know how you take that tackle out of the game without really altering the way everything was played.
Is everything already altered? I mean, are you seeing high-powered offenses scoring more points than we've seen in the past? Are you actively tracking those trends in terms of the way that the game is changing with all of the rule changes in an attempt to try to make it something that can expand its audience, that everybody might feel a little bit more comfortable watching?
Yeah, it's funny. This year, offense has been going up, 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 up. And then this year, offense has been down. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing that is not really so much the rule changes, which favor the offense. Defenses are faster than they've ever been. You have, right now, you have defensive ends who are 250 pounds. I'm 35 years old. When I was a kid, those guys were 270, 275 pounds. Defensive tackles were 320 pounds. They're 290 now. Linebackers are 230 pounds compared to 250, 260. And the reason is they have to compete with all this speed and spacing that we see now in offenses. And because of that, I think now it's harder to score in the red zone. There's not as much space. There's more speed. Guys can cover more ground. I wonder if in the next couple of years we're going to see a shift to teams going back to trying to play a fullback, run a little bit more power. Because they're going to say, look, we can run at your 290-pound defensive tackle. We can run at your 250-pound defensive end. I wonder if that shift is coming. You see the Niners do that. I mean, Kyle Juszczyk is one of the fullbacks that we still see in the league. The Ravens do that at times. They have Ricard in there who's 300 pounds as a fullback. He's essentially a sixth offensive lineman. I would not be surprised if more teams start going, okay, if you're going to play that small and light against us, we're going to punish you with the ground game. Everything's cyclical in life, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a cycle change in the NFL in the next few years.
Be interesting to see more value in the next few years come back to that position. I mean, talk about things being cyclical. That's been a big storyline, at least heading into this season, is the fact that those guys feel undervalued. Maybe if the game continues to shape-shift the way that it does, we'll see kind of a resurgence in what those guys can bring. What are you paying attention to, Matt, at the trade deadline upcoming? Who do you have your eye on in terms of big names that could be on the move?
Yeah, and it's a weird deadline. I don't know that you're going to have a ton of really big names out there. I mean, I think going into the year, a lot of people thought, oh, Mike Evans might be out there, but Tampa Bay's 3-2, and they're right in the race for the NFC South. I don't know that they're all of a sudden going to blow things up. Denver's the team that I look at and say, you kind of have to make a move here. You kind of have to trade some guys. They have not had high-end draft capital for a couple of years because of the Russell Wilson trade, and they're still paying off Sean Payton. They don't have a second-round pick next year. So at some point, do you trade Cortland Sutton? Do you trade Jerry Jeudy? Do you trade Justin Simmons? If some team offered you 2 first-round picks for Patrick Surtain, would you do it? I don't know. I think you'd at least have to listen. At some juncture, I think Denver, especially with Sean Payton now being in there, I understand he's not the GM, but he runs the show there. So does he kind of clean house? We've already seen Randy Gregory out the door. Frank Clark gone. I think we will see some teams sell off some minor parts because the upcoming draft might be, and I feel like this is said every year, but it might be one of the best drafts for quarterbacks in a very long time. I mean, there's never been more than 6 quarterbacks that have gone in the first round. My colleague over at SI, Albert Breer, put out a piece that some people think 8 are worthy of going in the first round within the league circles. And there are so many teams that need quarterbacks, whether it's a team like New England or maybe the Giants where their younger quarterback's not getting it done. Maybe it's a team like Denver that you look at and go, okay, look, Russell Wilson's there, but maybe you just start to bring in somebody who can replace him in a year or two. Maybe it's a team like Tennessee or Minnesota who has a veteran quarterback who's not going to be there next year. There are so many teams that are going to be jockeying for position to get in line, to get a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, a Michael Penix Jr. I think you could see some movement. I just don't think you're going to see a ton of really big names because a lot of those teams don't have big names to offer.
Do you think Baker Mayfield will have done enough to assure his team that they might not need to get in line?
I think that the Buccaneers are good enough that it's going to be hard to be in that spot. Like, I think if you're Tampa, that division's bad. You probably are going to win 8 or 9 games if you continue to play the way you're playing. And if that's the case, then maybe you sit there and look at it and go, all right, look, he's good enough to win some games, and we're now drafting 19th. We're not going to be able to draft one of these kids unless we trade way up. Now, if there ends up being 6 to 8 guys that go in the first round, somebody's going to fall. I don't think the Buccaneers would hesitate. Mayfield at this point is on a 1-year deal. He's been fine. I don't think he's good enough that all of a sudden you'd say we don't have a need at the position. But, again, if they're way back there, this is going to be a draft. You're going to have teams that move up that are aggressive to try to get up there. Would Jason Light do that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think Mayfield has played himself into a spot where all of a sudden they're going to give him a big extension. I do think, however, he's played well enough that they're not going to have a top 5 pick as some people thought maybe they would going into the season.
I am blown away by what Aaron Rodgers is doing 5 weeks removed from surgery. The fact that he is on this leg and starting to throw around a little bit. And then I think to myself, Matt, if there's anybody who would do it, it will be him. I mean, what is your impressions? What are your impressions of what he's done after this surgery? And where do you sort of lean in terms of whether or not he'll be available at all this season?
I mean, I have a hesitation from the standpoint that if you're the Jets, you have to be 100% confident that he's healed, like fully healed. Because if he goes out there week 15, he blows out his Achilles. Like he tears his Achilles again. Now you're missing him for most of next year. Like, you can't have that happen. That's a disaster. So you have to be fully confident. I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers is his own man, and he goes to the beat of his own drum. And I know he said, hey, I believe in, basically, I'm paraphrasing, the power of thought. And that's great. But at some point, the Jets are going to say to him, Aaron, we think that's fantastic. We'd like to speak to a medical professional who agrees with your opinion. I mean, the Jets aren't going to just take him at his word for it. They're going to want to talk to a host of medical professionals, including on their staff, headlined by their staff, and they're going to say, is he good to go? Now, it's not impossible. We have seen, Cam Akers tore his Achilles back in July, the year the Rams won the Super Bowl, came back and played in the postseason. It is possible. I remember years ago in the 90s, Jerry Rice tore his ACL week 1. He came back in December. Now, the problem was he played 1 game, he got hurt again. So that's the question here. I think Rodgers is going to push to play this season. The question is whether or not the Jets say, yeah, we're good with that, we're confident in you, because if he comes back and they're 6-7, I mean, you're taking an enormous risk that, hey, it's not 100% healed. You blow it out again, and now you're not back till November of next year, and now we've lost 2 years with you. So I do think there's a big risk. I know he wants to play, he'll push to play, but they're going to have to clear it with people that have a background in medicine and not just, hey, I think I'm good, let me go out there.
Just while we're on the injury front, Matt, Anthony Richardson having season-ending surgery, and there's been a little bit of chatter about Andrew Luck's injury surgery sort of influencing what is done with Richardson. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Colts obviously went through a very tumultuous time when they lost Andrew Luck because Andrew Luck basically said, I'm done getting beat up, I'm going to retire. Now, with Anthony Richardson, I was at their camp this summer. Anthony Richardson might be the biggest quarterback I've ever seen. I mean, you're talking, it's like if George Kittle or Travis Kelce was playing quarterback. It's unbelievable. At the same point, I think the Colts are erring on the side of caution. They want to get this done. They don't want to take any chances. They want to make sure the young man heals up correctly, and I don't blame them. Gardner Minshew is a good backup. He can go in there and win a few games. They're not going to go to the playoffs, I don't believe, either way. And so, look, you take full precaution. I will say I think that the Andrew Luck thing, the experience of that is instructive for Chris Ballard, the GM, who is both here now and was there at the time. Jim Irsay, of course, who was the owner of both times. I think there is a little bit of, we cannot have this happen again. We need to take care of our guy at all costs. And so if that means that we lose a few more games this year than we were going to, fine. We'll do that. It's a smart move to make sure he's right. You have too big of an investment, the number 4 overall pick. He showed a lot of promise this year. It's unfortunate because he needs reps. He didn't play a ton in college. He's a guy who I think really needs the snaps, so that part of it is obviously no good. But at the same point, he's got to be 100%. And this surgery, while it'll keep him out this year, it does ensure that he'll be back next season in full go.
Just a couple more for you, Matt, and then I'll let you go. What do you think that is the most compelling storyline heading into this weekend? I mean, have there been any teams that have surprised you? Is there anything you've written about that has surprised you?
Yeah, I think, look, there have been a few teams. The Browns defensively have been unbelievable. I was also at their camp. I wrote about their defense. I actually wrote about Jim Schwartz when I was there, and I expected them to be good. I did not expect them to be one of the best defenses of all time through 6 weeks. How good do they continue to be? Now, this week they should win. They're playing Indianapolis. That's a team that you would expect that they would handle if they're a team that should go to the playoffs, although it is an open question whether Deshaun Watson plays or not, as he's dealing with that rotator cuff injury. The storyline for me that I'm watching, though, this week is Philadelphia and Miami on Sunday Night Football. Look, Miami has been a juggernaut offensively this season. However, they've played one good team, and that one good team beat them by 28 points. And now you go to Philly, which anybody who's ever been to Philadelphia knows that is no easy place to play a game. And they've got to go in there. The Eagles lost last week. I want to see the Dolphins go in there and show me that they can beat a really good team. Last year they made the playoffs, and I remember there was a 3-game stretch on the road, all 3 of them, I believe all in December. They played the Chargers, the Niners, and the Bills on the road. They lost all 3 of them. This year, they've played one team that isn't a bottom 7 team in the league. They got beat 48-20. I like the Dolphins. I believe in the Dolphins, but they've got to show me they can win a big game like this. This is a tough spot on the road against a good team, but a good team that, in fact, very good team, but that hasn't really found itself yet. Show me something. Go win this game. Show me you're among the elite.
And the Eagles, I imagine not only is it tough to play at home, but coming off something of an embarrassment. I mean, talk about motivation and being dialed in. You're not going to sneak up on them. That just happened last weekend, even though Miami's not sneaking up on anybody. I mean, what's your score prediction? Do you think Miami can get it done?
I think they can get it done. I'm going to take Philadelphia because Philadelphia's won a bunch of games like these, and Miami hasn't yet. And that game's at home, and I don't think the Jets did Miami any favors by beating the Eagles. So I think it's like 27-23, something like that. Miami has to show they can win these games. I mean, look, 2 of the next 3 weeks, we're going to find out. They play at Philly, then they come home. They come home. They come home and they play New England, who they should kill, and then they go and play the Chiefs in Germany. You're gonna find out a whole lot about Miami 2 of the next 3 weeks. I mean, these games, you're talking about playing 2 of the top 3 teams in football, along with San Francisco. So I think Miami can win the game. I think it probably comes down to the 3rd down conversions and red zone. Whoever wins those battles wins the game.
Matt Verderame, thank you so much for the time. You are killing it at Sports Illustrated. So happy for you, my friend. Best of luck to you this weekend and beyond. It was great to catch up with you.